You are sitting there, holding your injury like it proves something about you. Betrayal from coworkers, indifference from a boss, disrespect from the person you chose to love, and you keep feeding yourself a sweet little story to survive the taste of it. I'm fine. The sky will take care of me. People will eventually see my worth. But the sky does not bargain with weak signals. Reality does not reward silence. The truth is simpler and uglier than your coping mechanism. Nobody arranges kindness for someone who has agreed to lie down. You don't get a golden outcome because you suffered quietly. You get outcomes based on what you can tolerate, what you can defend, and what you refuse to allow. If your boundaries are decorative, the world treats them like furniture. Nobody has to respect. So look into the mirror and say the thing you avoid every day. You don't have to be a villain to be harmful. You can be harmless and still be discarded. You can be polite and still be used. You can be nice and still be defeated. In a harsh ecosystem, harmlessness is not a virtue, it's a permission slip. And that's where this video starts, not with encouragement. With excavation, what you call goodness might be cowardice in clean clothing. What you call morality might be a psychological defense so old you no longer recognize it as self-protection. This is about the hidden self that learned to survive by shrinking, the monster you're trying to deny, the one you were taught to bury so you could perform being safe for other people. I'm going to talk about the rules the winners follow, even when they look kind. I'm going to talk about how you accidentally nurture the version of yourself that keeps losing. And I'm going to show you how the so-called monster is not a curse. It's raw energy that decides whether you become a weapon or a victim. You're not here by accident. You're here because something inside you is tired of being reasonable while everyone else profits from your softness. You want a way out, but you also want it without admitting what you've been protecting. Let's begin. First, let's dissect the concept of the good person you were trained to worship. People around you taught you a script long before you had language for it. Be agreeable, don't make trouble, don't be dramatic, don't raise your voice, don't embarrass anyone. Be the calm one, be the stable one, be the angel in the room, be the one who smooths things over. And you complied, because compliance felt like safety. When you were younger, safety meant being liked. Liked meant protected. Protected meant you didn't get punished. So you learned to become predictable. You learned to be non-threatening. You learned to treat your own anger like a forbidden substance, something dirty that must be hidden. Now you sit in adulthood, and the same mechanism runs in your head automatically. Someone insults you, and you swallow it. Someone crosses a line, and you justify it. Someone exploits your effort, and you keep performing gratitude. You don't fight because you were never taught how. You were taught how to be lovable without being dangerous. Here's the brutal part. A lot of people confuse not causing harm with having strength. The truth is that many of you don't avoid conflict because you're morally superior. You avoid it because you cannot tolerate the emotional cost of confrontation. You fear backlash. You fear abandonment. You fear being seen as difficult. You fear losing your social status. Your kindness becomes a leash, and your leashed behavior becomes your identity. And then you call it virtue. The psychology behind this is simple, and it's been studied for decades in different languages. When you reject a part of yourself, it doesn't disappear, it goes underground. If you deny anger long enough, it doesn't vanish, it gets compressed. Like a gas trapped in a closed container, it finds pressure. And that pressure looks for an outlet, but it won't be clean and direct. It will come out sideways. It comes out as passive aggression. You smile while you resent. You nod while you judge. You stay quiet at the meeting and vent later to the one person you believe will validate you. You procrastinate like you're busy. But the truth is you are sabotaging the very life you claim you want. You make small, cruel choices because you need relief. You don't call it revenge, but it is. You don't admit it, but you act it. This is why so many sweet people are emotionally poisonous. They are not emotionally honest. They are not boundary trained. They are not conflict skilled. They are holding a permanent emergency inside, and they keep calling it maturity. Let me give you a micro story. Imagine a workplace where a manager consistently takes credit for your work. You're always supportive. You're always flexible. You're always understanding. You think you're being professional. Then one day someone else, louder and less polite, confronts the manager. That person gets embarrassed, maybe even criticized, but the manager stops taking credit. Suddenly the system adjusts. You observe this and you feel a flicker of rage, not because the other person is immoral, because you realize your own strategy was never designed to protect your value. It was designed to protect you from discomfort. You didn't lose your power by being kind. You lost it because you were willing to pay for your kindness with your self-respect. And the story you tell yourself afterwards is even darker. You don't say, "I didn't assert myself." You say, "I'm not like those people. I have higher standards. I'm above it." In your mind, moral elevation turns into a cage. You become proud of suffering. You become addicted to being misunderstood as good. You treat it like martyrdom is the same thing as dignity. But in reality, you've chosen a role in someone else's hierarchy, the easy one, the one who absorbs damage, the one who rarely forces consequences. In a system where power flows toward those who can enforce it, your nice behavior is not neutral. It is a resource for other people's success. People can smell your compliance like blood in water. So the question is not whether you are a good person. The question is whether you are a safe target. Now let's escalate, because the next layer is where the real hidden self shows itself. You think the monster is only in other people. You assume cruelty is something other personalities do. You imagine predatory behavior as a personality trait belonging to villains on purpose. Meanwhile, you cast yourself as the opposite, the gentle, reasonable one who would never stoop. But here is what you learn to hide from yourself. You also contain aggression. You also contain ambition. You also contain the desire to dominate your environment, to be chosen, to be safe, to be respected, to be first. Your desire is not the problem. Your denial is. The monster is what happens when your aggressive energy and your survival instincts are forced into a shape your parents, your community, your school, your religious narrative, your culture's approval economy can tolerate. So you cover it, you shrink it, you rename it, you call your ambition responsibility, you call your need for control planning, you call your hunger for status work ethic, you call your jealousy concern, you call your neediness empathy. But you don't get rid of the energy. It remains, it just changes costumes, and when it's starving, it eats you instead of the world. That's the part people refuse to face. They think shadow work is self-improvement in a wellness hoodie. No, it's exposure. It's admitting that you possess impulses you were trained to fear. You have dark urges. You have fantasies of humiliation, of paying someone back, of being so superior they finally feel the sting. You have the thought, "I deserve this more than them." You have the impulse to control who gets access to you and under what conditions. Maybe you don't act on it. Maybe you restrain yourself. But the impulses are real, and because you suppress them, they become irrational. Suppression does not create wisdom. It creates distortion. So then you become the paradoxical person everyone loves but quietly doubts. The person whose emotions are always reasonable, but whose loyalty is conditional. The person who appears ethical but cannot withstand the moment ethicality would cost them something. When it costs you something, you start negotiating with yourself. You lose consistency. You become a negotiator with your own soul. That's how victims are born, not from bad luck, from self-betrayal. Now let me connect this to the thing you keep calling injustice. You feel betrayed by the coworker, ignored by the boss, disrespected by the partner, and you interpret it as fate, as random cruelty, as unfairness. But your interpretation is wrong in a way that keeps you stuck. You are not witnessing random cruelty. You are witnessing a predictable outcome of your internal configuration. If you refuse to enforce boundaries, people will learn your limits quickly. They don't need to hate you. They just need to understand that your no is not real. Your please stop is not a lever. Your I'm okay is not truth. It's training for them. And then you ask why you keep being treated like you don't matter. It's because you quietly communicate through your behavior, through your tone, through your hesitation, through your inability to impose consequences that you can be negotiated with. You think you're being polite, you're being predictable, you think you're being moral, you're being non-enforcing, and the world respects power more than it respects principles. Not because power is holy, because power is functional. Which brings me to the next truth, why the bad people often win fast. They don't win because they're more moral. They win because they understand the game you're pretending isn't real. They understand that in human systems, survival is based on leverage. Leverage is not nice. Leverage is not patient. Leverage is not apologetic. Leverage is the ability to withdraw resources, to escalate conflict when needed, to end relationships, to refuse demands, to make consequences immediate. Leverage is the capacity to act without permission, and winners combine two qualities: the force to crush resistance and the intelligence to avoid unnecessary fighting. They can be calm because they know what happens if someone crosses them. Their peace is not fragile, their peace is protected. What about you? Your peace is hope-based, your peace is wish-based. You think if you stay good long enough, people will act good back. You think kindness is a currency that always buys fairness. That's a child's logic dressed as adult maturity. It's the logic of fairness as magic. In reality, kindness without boundaries gets interpreted as weakness. When you behave like you will accept harm to preserve harmony, predators become curious. They don't see a saint, they see a system with low resistance. So they test it. They take small things first. They interrupt. They postpone. They minimize. They disrespect. They push again. If you tolerate, they assume you will tolerate more. Then they keep pushing until you finally snap. And your snap is not respected because it comes late and explosively. It reads like instability. They don't fear you then. They fear the unpredictability you created by refusing to be honest earlier. So here's the escalation. Your anger doesn't vanish. It just becomes badly timed, badly expressed, and therefore easier to dismiss. You don't just lose respect, you also lose your own authority over yourself. Now we get to the core idea that will probably offend you, because you've been trained to think offense means wrongdoing. You need to nurture the monster, not the caricature monster from moral speeches, not the brute animal from fantasy. I mean the real monster, the integrated shadow energy, the part of you that can protect your boundaries, enforce consequences, say no without guilt, want more without apologizing, and compete without pretending you're above competition. This is not about becoming evil. This is about becoming complete. A half person is easy to manipulate. A half person is a puppet with one hand tied behind its back. A whole person is dangerous because they can act consistently with their inner truth. So you ask, how do you integrate the monster instead of letting it ruin you? You stop treating anger like it's a pollutant. You learn to feel it early, not late. Anger is information. It tells you where you're being violated. If you treat anger like something shameful, you will always be late to your own rescue. You stop treating ambition like it's selfish. Ambition is survival. It's the refusal to stay small. It's the engine that moves you from waiting to building. You stop treating desire for power like it's inherently corrupt. Power is neutral until it becomes sloppy. Power with discipline can be clean. Power without discipline becomes chaos. But the point is, you have to stop acting like you don't want what you want. When you integrate, you don't act from impulse. You act from decision. You learn to package your shadow energy into structure. This is why some people look calm while others look wild. It's not because calm ones lack darkness. It's because they learn to control it. And this control changes everything. Imagine someone who can say no with a steady voice. Imagine someone who can hold eye contact when challenged. Imagine someone who can walk away from a negotiation without begging to be chosen. That person doesn't need to raise their voice because they already have an exit. Their power is in their willingness to end things. Their power is in their self-respect. Now imagine your current life. Where do you struggle to say no? Where do you delay the truth because you're afraid of being disliked? Where do you sacrifice your time, your money, your energy, your peace, just to preserve a comfortable image of yourself? That's the monster starving. And when the monster starves, it doesn't become kinder. It becomes warped. It turns into resentment. It turns into sabotage. It turns into unhealthy attraction toward the very people who hurt you, because familiar harm feels like destiny. So the real question is not, how do I become nicer? The question is, how do I become dangerous in a disciplined way? Now let's get tactical, because psychology without tools becomes another excuse to feel deeply without changing. You need a triple set of weapons, not to hurt people for fun, but to protect the integrity of your life. If you don't have tools, you will return to your old habits. You will revert to compliance. You will revert to the performative moral persona. So here are the three tools that separate the victim pattern from the sovereign pattern. First, absolute competence. This is the least glamorous truth. Most people want charisma, confidence, aesthetics. They want someone to tell them they are special. But real power in human systems is competence, not theory. Competence, the kind that makes you irreplaceable for a specific outcome. In workplaces, competence turns into leverage because people can't easily substitute you. If you can solve the problem other people can't solve, you gain the right to be treated like you matter. Nobody respects your suffering, they respect your function. You've probably seen this already. When a person is genuinely skilled, their boundaries are tolerated, their requests are taken seriously, their mistakes are corrected instead of mocked, their attitude is interpreted charitably. When you are not competent, your niceness looks like begging. People use your weakness as permission to ignore you. So stop seeking validation and start building the kind of competence that forces reality to look at you. Second, sharp language. Most people are powerless because they cannot translate their internal truth into external words. They get disrespected, and then later, at night, they finally think of the perfect response. That is not just frustration, it's evidence of a communication gap. When you cannot speak decisively, you become a target for emotional manipulation. Someone can twist your meaning, redefine your intentions, and you will be left explaining yourself until you run out of dignity. Language is a boundary. A clean no is not rudeness, it's clarity. Clarity prevents harm. When you soften every refusal, you teach people to negotiate your limits. So you must train decisive speech, not yelling, not theatrics, decisive language, short sentences, logical structure, terms that make your position clear and your willingness to walk away undeniable. You're not trying to win debates. You're trying to prevent confusion. Confusion is the doorway to manipulation, and if you've ever been gaslit, you know confusion is a weapon. People use it to make you doubt yourself. Sharp language destroys that weapon. Third, the ability to say no with moral separation. This is the most important weapon, and it's also the one people resist the most because it breaks their identity. You have been taught to equate goodness with compliance. You believe that if you say no, you become a bad person. But sovereignty is different. Sovereignty means you bind yourself to your ethics, not other people to your hopes. You choose your behavior. You stop demanding that the world reward your goodness automatically. You separate ethics from expectation. Ethics, I will not cheat, I will not harm. I will act with discipline. Expectation, I will not assume others will be fair because I'm fair. When you stop expecting fairness as a law, you stop suffering from disappointment. You start treating betrayal as information, not destiny. You start responding with strategy instead of tears. Now you might say, but if I stop expecting fairness, won't I become cold? No, you become realistic. Cold is what happens when you are empty inside and numb out of fear. Realistic is what happens when you still have values, but you finally understand the world doesn't owe you comfort. This is how you escape the victim identity without turning into a sociopath. You remain ethical, but you become enforceable. You become someone who can protect your life. Let's connect these three tools to the situations you already know too well. If your boss devalues you and you have competence, you become less desperate. You don't beg, you negotiate, and you prepare your next step if negotiations fail. If a coworker undermines you and your language is sharp, you document, you state facts clearly, and you don't allow their narrative to rewrite reality. If your partner disrespects you and you can say no with moral separation, you stop rewarding disrespect with forgiveness that comes without accountability. You stop treating your tolerance as love. And yes, this will change your relationships, because relationships run on behavior, not on what you intend. So what happens when you enforce boundaries? At first, some people will react like you attacked them. They will call you egoistic. They will accuse you of changing. They will claim you used to